Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week ahead. This week, we are moving through a lunar phase of a last quarter square. So we have the sun in the sign of Cancer, and the moon just entered the sign of Aries. I don't know about you, but man, those last few degrees of that Pisces moon put me to sleep. It was really hard to get going energetically. And the Aries moon, is ruled by this Mars at the last degrees of Leo. I was really reflecting on the tarot card, the Lovers, and the sign of the Lovers is often associated with the sign of Gemini, but it's also, this idea of Venus and Mars, the masculine and the feminine. And we've had Venus and Mars moving through the sign of Leo. And they've been close together while not in a conjunction. And that movement is about to enter a phase of separation, right? So they've come a long way where they're now traveling together. And as this separation happens, Mars will enter Virgo, and that will happen, this week as we move into the week. It's like Mars is in this culminating energy in the last degrees of Leo. And Venus will get to her station degree and slow down and station retrograde. So yesterday was the day of her maximum brightness. And then this like shifting energy is all a part of what's happening in this week. We also have with this lunar phase that we are at the very end of the nodal cycle. So the nodes of the moon move backwards in the zodiac, and they have been moving through the sign of Taurus and Scorpio, starting at 29 degrees all the way back to 0 degrees. And very soon they will also ingress into the sign, or we should say regress into the sign of Aries, which is a Mars ruled sign. That's coming, right? But there's this simultaneous culmination energy, late degrees, 29 degrees, and an also culmination energy at 0 degrees. So something about this particular week, while this is also moving in this last quarter phase, closing the lunar cycle before the new moon in Cancer, feels like an important sayonara, and it's not just saying goodbye to certain aspects of our identity or our lives. In a way, we're saying goodbye to an era in particular that is a much longer, slower goodbye. Yesterday, I was on the NCGR community discussion panel, which our local NCGR group, NCGR San Francisco, hosts a discussion every month. And I hosted the discussion for the shifting of the nodes. And it's likened to a death process, right? But this is the kind of death process in a way where the patriarchy is this ancient, grandfather lying on its deathbed in incredible pain, just ailing and aching and making everyone in the hospital miserable, complaining and saying, and grasping for everything that he can get in order to not let go, right? And we can all relate to that, like energy of holding on to something because we're afraid of the death of it. We're afraid of what will happen when we take our last breath. I feel like it's a very particular calling, people who are called to be death doulas or death care companions, where they're walking with people whose lives and bodies are coming to an end. And yet on an evolutionary journey, if we were speaking in terms of the evolutionary journey, Pluto is retrograde in Capricorn, very similarly to being in the death throes at the very end. And a part of what makes this a really interesting and unique time is that the nodal axis will never repeat again in our lifetime in this configuration with Pluto in Capricorn and the nodes in Taurus, Scorpio. So we're saying, we're completing in this cycle. And at the same time, it's not an easy death. The Pluto and Capricorn energy doesn't want to go down quickly. It wants to take and hold on and grasp for as much as it possibly can. And, just like we might really hold on to the last breath of death, because there's a fear that life is going to end and I don't know what I will be. I don't know who I will be, where I will be, where I will go, what I will do. And imagine if you're looking at your life, of course you'd want to know, you'd want to have answers, you'd want to be able to see clearly. And in these particular times, we can't even really envision the future without some lens of the Pluto in Capricorn conditioning, coloring how we see the world, how we see what's possible. I remember one time in one of the most profound ceremonies I ever did, I received a vision of the world, and it was so powerful to imagine perfect peace on earth and to have a direct experience of what it's like to be not with anything necessarily changing in my experience, to be able to be with things that are uncomfortable feelings, uncomfortable thoughts, difficult emotions, all these things, while simultaneously maintaining a state of mind that has perfect peace, total trust in life, right? And that's a state that I wish I could say that I could live in. I feel like a part of the deepening of spiritual practice that we're invited into is this invitation to make peace with where we are. Make peace with exactly how life is in this moment, because that's the gateway through which we walk into a different world, right? But it's not going to happen through our resistance, through our complaining, through the last gasps of breath, trying to hold on to it. If it goes, we won't know who we are or where we're going. And this, this invitation, this call to courage says, don't you have already the wisdom to know everything you already need to know in order to do exactly what you're called to do? And if you don't have the wisdom, then the wise thing to do would be to slow down, to really go in and say, if this is my last breath, if this is all I'm taking with me, what am I doing here now? Can I make peace, total peace with everything I'm experiencing in my life? Can I accept the relationship the way that it's not the way that I want? Can I accept the discontent in the world? Can I accept the releases that I've been praying for are yet to come, right? Can I accept that the healing is certain, even if the manifestation isn't in form? There was a person that I know peripherally through friends of friends who's been in and out of deep and intense cancer therapy. And interestingly enough, she came to mind a few days ago, and I thought, oh, I wonder if she had died. And then all of a sudden on Facebook, out of nowhere, popped up this notification. There she is. And not only was she still alive, but she was acknowledging hiding, being afraid, fearing asking for the help that she needs, feeling ashamed that she continues to struggle in her healing journey and to need help, embarrassed to admit that all it would take on some level would be 40 friends, providing her with financial support on an ongoing monthly basis, because the systems that would normally be in place to provide support, the things we rely upon, like a job and income and or family, are not there for her. And to whatever extent the medical, the chemotherapy and the radiation has taken a toll on her body. And then there's this also hiding because she's knowing that she's not who she wants to be. When I met her, she was a strong, incredibly beautiful woman who had birthed 2 children and had a beautiful lover and relationship, and had a beautiful life, and was opening her own healing center. And then I witnessed her illness, and then her relationship dissolve, and then her life disintegrate. And I've witnessed her come to the edge of death many times, to where I almost assumed that the silence of her voice meant that she had passed. And it was a really interesting thing to see her reemerge and honoring, admitting, vocalizing the tender, humbling journey of being faced once again with a vulnerability that was greater than her strength. And yet she had the strength to come out and to speak out and to say, she had the courage to ask for help again, even though many people would probably ignore her post or not feel compelled to give more to her. Maybe those who have even helped her along the way might feel like they don't really know how to support her. And there's so many ways in which this particular time, Aries moon time, Aries carries the courage of instinctual creation, right? The will and the desire to sever, to cut. And what are we cutting ties with? We're cutting ties with the ways in which we have felt or inflicted, whether we're giving or receiving the guilt, it's no different. Felt or received guilt. We're cutting ties with the ways we have suppressed our emotions, our emotional reality, and diminished our feelings because people said that was too much. People weren't available to care, to connect, to snuggle. Maybe we had a need to be held as a young child, and a parent wasn't there or wasn't emotionally attuned or sensitive. And that developed this feeling of, I am alone. I will always be alone. I can't trust anyone to love me. I can't rely upon anyone, oh man, to care for me. And when we are little and we make those decisions, when we have a world that appears unsafe, uncaring, unnourishing, I think there's such a beautiful part of us that gets hidden away. And I think of cancer as the crab, and I used to say this, the hard outer shell, tender, sweet meat inside. And when we've lived in a world that doesn't foster safety for mothers, that doesn't have systems of support for people who are sick, for people who are lonely, doesn't have mechanisms for developing healthy, loving, securely attached relationships, doesn't support parents to raise their children in a way that is enough emotional resilience to give parents the opportunity to experience what thriving parenting would look like. What does it look like for thriving parents to exist? Not sleep deprived, stressed out parents, not parents who cope with self-medication or rage on their children, not parents who are dissociated from themselves and their lives, or feel like they have to sacrifice their passions, their joys, their desires, their callings, simply to care for others, constantly caring, constantly cleaning, constantly tending, right? And we can lose even the energy, the motivation, the desire for that which nourishes us, for that which calls our souls. We can even lose strength in those things because the conditions of the world, from a very young age, for many of us, set up this protection around this sweet and most vulnerable part of us. And so there's a healing journey relative to reclaiming that. And a lot of people call that inner child work, but I don't so much connect with the inner child work or the reparenting work as much as I feel like, wow, it's relearning how to live. It's not just self-care from the perspective of getting a pedicure or a massage, but it's like really learning how to love oneself, how to communicate one's needs or desires, really learning what embodiment of our desires feels like, what it's like to feel a sense of the purity and innocence of our inner being radiating outwards into the world and being safe to be received, being loved. And, one of my students shared reflections with me, and it really touched me so deeply, this idea that the truth is that there cannot be unrequited love. And I wrestle with that because I don't actually know. I don't know. I'm sure there are many people who have experienced living in a state of loving someone and we can love others, but not do anything to change them, not do anything to save them, right? And changing them and saving them is not love. Obviously, those are forms of codependence or rescuing or patterns, right? We have to be able to recognize those patterns and come back to ourselves, come back to where our you know union even with a beloved isn't a state of always being together. It doesn't mean we'll never be physically apart. It means that we don't see ourselves, our journey, the love that we are, as being separate from another. And so, hypothetically speaking, that could happen with anyone. And I've had many experiences in my life of feeling like I just see a person and know that I love them, and I don't have any experiences or beliefs in the way of loving them, and it's just effortless. And then there are others in our life where we have to work. We have to work to clear things out of the way, clear perceptions, clear past hurts. And I can see how this particular time, we could call this the great clearing. And I'm talking about on a greater level, the scope of our Pluto in Capricorn, nodal purge time. This is a great clearing. We're excavating out all those parts that have defended, protected, right? Mars is to attack. What does our anger do? What does it do? It protects. And where is it most useful? To defend the most vulnerable part of ourselves. Where is it least useful? To attack another and thus create separation, hurt, harm. Because that ultimately, if we know ourselves as one with another, one with everyone other than us, we would know that that doesn't serve to do anything but hurt both of us. The one that is here is hurt also by the one that is here. And so in that way, that's kind of the opening to forgiveness, because we can understand if those who have hurt us on some level, they have been hurt, and that we, in our forgiveness, first forgiving ourselves for whatever we need to, right? This is a clearing of guilt, shame, embarrassment, loss of self that came from the experience. And forgiveness allows us to begin to enjoy our life again. It's not necessarily, although it can be releasing another person and giving them back, okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you is ultimately in the Ho'oponopono prayer, it's thank you, I love you, please forgive me. And please forgive me, thank you, I love you, right? These things are kind of like the triangle of the forgiveness that anchors us in a state of gratitude. It's what allows us to really feel. And I think this prayer works both ways, although it's genuinely, helpful for if there's been something where you feel like, okay, this nodal shift is coming. I don't want to take anything more with me into the next season of my life. If I'm packing my bags and I'm getting ready to embark on a journey that is a whole new chapter of my life, and even now I'm preparing for that chapter, I want to be sure to purge resentment, fear, guilt, anger, complaining, disappointment, grief, sadness. Not that the sadness or the grief can't come with us. Of course, some of it, it's like, I think of grief as the most powerful indication of a loving, open heart. We can't feel grief if we can't feel our heart. So we can take our heart with us, but leave behind the past, right? That's what that Scorpio South Node at 0 degrees is saying. Leave it in the past where it belongs. Give it a final kiss goodbye. If you're watching the patriarchy die, taking its final gasping breaths, and it's not happy with this death, of course, because it wants to oppress and suppress. Notice where your own oppression or suppression or depression feels like, oh yeah, that wants to go too. Because what wants to come is the joyful, innocent child that I am reconnecting to in the present moment, right? Inner child work brings you back to yourself now, where you're here now in your life. Doesn't matter if you're 36, doesn't matter if you're 75, doesn't matter if you're 53 or you're 20 years old. Wherever you are in your life now, this is where you look at the stuff that you've been carrying, you know, the bags, the tears and the fears and the resentments, and you say, you know, it was useful to feel that. It's useful to face that. It's useful to see these things, but do I need to take this with me? And where does this live most frequently? It lives in the story. You know, in the Gemini moon, we can connect to the story. What's the story of the lovers? How do they meet? So many people come to me and ask me, Michelle, when am I going to meet someone? And I can look at the chart and see by transits, okay, right? But if we're not getting up off the couch and going out into the world, if we're not seeking to connect, if we're not deeply owning the parts of us from within that are calling for readiness, calling for us to ready ourselves for that relationship, we might miss the opportunity. Not to say that it's not there, because there's opportunities every day to meet someone. And, you know, here we have, I'm speaking about this as the moon is applying to Vesta and then to the vertex, which is often referred to as a soulmate point in the chart, right? So each and every one of us will have a vertex in your natal chart. And that often I've seen it indicate like deep and profound connections for souls, in the same way that nodal connections in the chart can reflect that, right? But our relationship, ultimately, the most important relationship is to ourselves. And that relationship becomes the foundation upon which all other relationships are connected from. Everyone else that we meet in the world, what we see in the world, what we experience in the world originates from the universe of you. And so there's no greater thing that you can do than to tend to the universe of you with immense care and love, and with a profound curiosity to say, what can I let go of today? And what can I call in today? What can I, you know, Venus is ruling that North Node in this last 0 degrees. It's like, hello, prayers. Reaching prayers to the divine, and we're calling them down calling them down with our voice, with our words. We're going to be coming together this weekend for the new moon ceremony. And so for all of my students in Love Evolution and in my Evolution student membership is included this community space that I create where I transmit on the new moon. We generally do it right after the first light of the moon. And we have this beautiful Cancer moon, which is really coming into that intimacy within the self, the womb, the center of your being, where life force comes from, where your life force comes from, and how much care and tenderness that needs from you every day. Presence, your love, your care. Every day, your inward attention. And then it also needs care from the environment, from the world. It needs care and tending from those that you have relationships with. And, the baby doesn't have any communication skills whatsoever other than its sounds. My daughter, Emuna, I love listening to her sounds. They're incredible. And we'll take her, to church or to the synagogue, and people will come to me and say, I just love hearing her sounds, her little coos and her little she has this way, and I am attuning. I sort of know, even though I don't know what she's saying, what she's thinking, I can't essentially know, but there's a knowing. Human beings can create a connection with their universe without words. We are profound, telepathic, sensitive, empathic creatures. And I'm, as we're closing these cycles, for those of you who are more sensitive, this is these culminating degrees can be incredibly intensifying. So take good care, take rest, give yourself permission to be like a little child and to need what a child needs, and to go inside in this time as you prepare for the new chapter of your life, and really look in there and see what's meant to come with you, and what's meant to be will be. What's meant to grow in light inside of you, in your heart, in your life, will grow. It's just, it's the destiny of the soul to know itself, to return to source, right? And even if we're grasping with fear at the end of our life, maybe there is someone coming to our side who can take a last breath with us or be with us. If there's some part of our life, that most of us knows must go, but not all of us is willing to let go, maybe then we just meet that deep and tender heart and listen to what it wants to say. So, my friends, blessings on this new moon week, on the wrapping of time around the changing of seasons, the wrapping of our soul around the calling for this next cycle of our life. We have so much power in our vulnerability, of course, because it's always pointing to the deepest and most true source of our strength. And so with that, may you find strength and courage and capacity and love and tenderness within this week. And until we meet again, as always, please give this video a thumbs up, like, and subscribe to this channel. And if you missed the free class on Venus and the nodes, you can find it at astrologywithmichelle.com. I posted it on the blog, on my website. Every week I post this video on this channel, and if you're a subscriber, you will be notified of that. But if you are on my website subscription, you'll also be notified when I have free classes and things like that. So you can get access to that live class transmission that I did last Friday. And I hope that you'll join me in this journey by sharing your heart, what touched you in the week ahead, or what you're looking forward to, what you're working with. Your words and your comments and your presence is so deeply nourishing to my life. And I'm so grateful to be able to walk with you all. So thank you so much for listening, my friends. Bye for now.